It is a weeping in the morning and a natural thing. It is a weeping in the morning and a natural thing. It is a when it comes to the mic sound, which is the champion sound.
Okay, Lamborghini Mercy. Yo, chick, she so thirsty. I'm in that 2C Lambo with your girl, she tryna jerk. Okay, Lamborghini Mercy. Yo, chick, she so thirsty. I'm in that 2C Lambo with your girl, she tryna jerk.
3, 2, 1, and what up?
What's going on, man?
Welcome back to the second episode of Fill in the Blank. Everybody who listened last time, thank you. Rahil, thank you for joining on this one. And
Happy to be here.
one of the things I'm actually getting better at is kind of saying, hey, I have a podcast, and this is what it's about. So I'm going to keep it simple. This podcast, for those of you who are just joining today, is really about discovering something about yourself that maybe was a blind spot or maybe something that you relate to or resonates with you based on other people sharing. So I'm going to invite a bunch of people. The feedback from Gabby was a little too much, Rahil. So I'm going to try and not let you outshine me. But she's definitely going to be a regular. You probably will too, just because we've been friends forever. So let me do my quick intro on you, and then let's just hop into it, bro.
Let's do it.
All right. So for those of you who don't know, Rahil, who's on the phone, has been my best friend for like ever, right? So he's someone I consider a good friend. I have it written down. Chicago-born, Texas-bred, diehard Bears, Cubs, Bulls fan, head of programmatic media for New York City, publicist, B-level wingfluencer. You can catch him at the Wings Chronicle, former Wings NYC. We'll talk about that later. I'm not a big fan of the new, but whatever. Frequent guest judge for all wing contests around all the metro area. Overlook 42nd Street, right?
44th between 2nd and 3rd.
There you go. Hall of Famer. I was at the induction. World traveler, best person to tag along to their work Christmas party for sure. Arguably the best wedding Tribeca has ever seen. That's big. Husband of my favorite socialite in life, maybe? I don't know. I'm sure Sarah will come more than she needs to for the podcast. Currently living in a true one-bedroom in New York City, but he loves New Jersey. True or false?
False.
Tough start to the podcast. What up, bro?
I'm indifferent. I'm kidding. What's up, man?
You've probably been to Jersey more times than you'd like to admit.
Yeah, but remember, I've always wanted to come back. There's so many places we wanted to do. We wanted to hit Asbury Park. I still have never been to Atlantic City. God knows if I'll ever get that opportunity. We'll see when the world opens back up.
You never went to Asbury Park?
No.
Oh, you have to do that.
I know.
Oh, dude. Vinny was spending a lot of time there. For those of you who don't know, Vinny's one of our really good friends. It's actually how Rahil and I got to know each other. We met each other at a boozy brunch in 2013.
Yeah, 2013 at Prana, which used to be located on 28th Street.
Yeah, they closed that down pretty quick. It was fun. Was that your first year in New York City?
It was my first year. I moved October 2012.
Damn.
I moved October 15th. I remember because it was the weekend of Texas OU, arguably our biggest college football game.
Yeah.
I moved that Saturday. We lost to Oklahoma, so I was pissed when I landed. We went out that night to the bar No Fun on Ludlow Street. 2 weeks later, Hurricane Sandy happens, and I don't have a job, and now I can't find one because no one's hiring.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
So where were you? Were you living with Sarah, or did you have your own place?
So I quit my job in Dallas. I was working at JP Morgan at the time.
Yeah.
I hated banking. It was not for me.
Yeah.
I quit my job. I moved to New York, and basically until I could find my bearings, find a job and everything, Sarah and her roommate at the time, who I actually knew from college, let me live with them. And then I was fortunate enough to find a job at the end of the year in December, started in January. Their lease was over in February. And Sarah and I kind of just said, well, you know what, this will probably be financially responsible if we split a room and it'll be cheaper for both of us, and we'll continue to live with that said roommate. So we ended up finding an apartment on Mulberry in Houston, one of my favorite apartments of all time.
Italy spot.
Oh yeah, it was amazing, man. And we lived there for a year, the three of us. After the year, Sarah and I said, let's try to find our own spot.
Yep.
And then we found a studio, the one on First Street and Second Avenue in front of the Whole Foods. Lived together in a studio for 4 years before moving to our current location in Lower East Side, and we've been here for over 2 years now.
Yeah,
so essentially, we went from long distance for the first year we dated to me immediately moving in New York City and never leaving.
I mean, that sounds like a very Sarah relationship right there. I mean,
hey, if you can live in a studio for 4 years and end up getting married after the fact, then
it's funny, right? Because I've been married now almost 2 years, and I always tell people the relationship changes, right? You're in close proximity with the person. I mean, Kat and I lived together for a long time in different apartments, but never in such small quarters. So, like, you're the most. I feel, how long you been married?
7 months.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Damn. You wear the ring all the time now, or only sometimes?
I do.
Yeah, you do? Okay.
Starting to slip off, though,
Damn,
I'm going the other way during quarantine.
All right, so let's I hope people kind of get a feel for the cadence right now, but let's like zoom out a little bit, right? So one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on, first off, Gabby was great on the first episode. If you guys haven't seen that, watch that. Obviously being family, Gabby from, our crazy times in New York City and just kind of all over the place. She's a big part of my life. And I wanted to bring you on because we kind of have a similar vibe, right? Similar banter. I mean, you're in like 90% of my group chats, and we bullshit all day long together. And the other thing was that, what was it? Oh, so the bachelor party. That really kind of like solidified it for me when I went to your bachelor party and I got to meet all of your friends. Because in New York, we hang out, it's great, but it's always like our close-knit group of friends and maybe a few others that you scatter off with. But I actually got to meet the people that you like grew up with. Like these were guys were telling me stories at dinner because we spent how many days in Lake Tahoe? 4 days?
Let's see. We were in SF first, and then we went to Tahoe for like 3 nights.
Yeah. So I was the first person at your bachelor party.
Yeah.
That caught you at the airport. And then we actually got that upgrade at the W, which was amazing.
That was awesome.
That was really cool. And then Nuvi met with us. Nuvi's another friend of ours who came from London that day, who was killing the Nespresso machine in that hotel room. I don't think he left the room for like 4 hours. He just pounded Nespressos. No, but so we were at dinner, and I hung out with like a bunch of other people. And one of the things that was kind of like the theme was that we grew up together. Our dads all worked together. So like, kind of give me like, what kind of kid was Rahil, right? Like, if we could like go back, kind of what was childhood like? What do you remember of it? I think, immigrant to immigrant, my dad came here when he was 17, tried to make life, right? And then did. So I don't know if that's a similar story to yours. I don't think it's even something we've talked about, but just kind of riff off that.
Yeah. So it's interesting because, I obviously, take a lot of pride in being from Chicago, but it's just happenstance that a lot of the people that were coming over from the area that my parents grew up in, right, in Karachi, Pakistan, they were all going to maybe 2 or 3 different locations in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
It was either New York, either Chicago, and then later on it was most probably Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad came to Chicago, I want to say in the 70s. So he was here early on, and then my mom came early 80s.
Were you born at this time, or you weren't even born yet?
I wasn't born. They hadn't even met yet. So then they met.
Oh, okay.
They met. They got married in Chicago, and then I was born in 88.
Do you know where they met in Chicago?
So funny story. My dad was really, really good friends with my mom's older brother.
Okay. Oh.
Like they knew each other from back home. And my uncle was living in Chicago at the time. My whole extended family, my uncles, my aunts, everyone was in Chicago at this point. And then my mom moved when she was 18. Mm-hmm. And that's how they met. And so it's impressive because it's a love marriage at a time that like not a lot of people had it. But what's also very interesting is that my daddy is a little bit older than my mom, right? Because he's friends with my oldest uncle on that side. So
what, like 5 years, 6 years,
13.
Whoa.
Yeah. So they met, and it was a love marriage. So you can't deny that. And then my uncle was super pissed. He did not like that idea.
I wonder what that conversation was like. Like
he refused to come to the wedding.
He was what?
He refused to come to the wedding.
Stop it.
And then kind of as the time came closer and you know, all the other uncles and aunts had a chance to talk to him, he eventually, you know, conceded and came. But it's so interesting to hear, because when you grow up, you don't see any of that, right? If there was ever any animosity, that went away. Because I was fortunate, like I was the eldest. I have a younger sister, but I grew up basically with older brothers, because and you met all of them, right? All my cousins at the bachelor party, like they
so
were always, they're the eldest one is like 4 or 5 years older than me. And then it's just kind of an iteration. Every year there was another kind of one of us, and this is all from my mom's side. So growing up in Chicago, like I had the influence of the older guys, right? And that's kind of where two things came from, right? My passion for all the sports, particularly the Bears and the Cubs, and of course the Bulls in the 90s. Growing up in Chicago, that's just an easy one. But my absolute love for the WWF, like I was,
Really?
Dude, growing up in the 90s and having the Bulls and having the WWF Attitude Era.
Were you like a real WWF, or were you like a Hogan fan?
No, like I remember growing up through the creation and the dissolvement of the D-Generation X, right? The Nation of Domination, all the, and I just still remember when The Rock was Rocky Maivia, like back when he was wearing the nice, you know,
the
curls and stuff.
Hairline.
Yeah. So those things, like I became so enamored with and passionate about.
Dude.
You know, and yes, there's sports and sports entertainment, but that was like a huge part of my childhood that I remember. And then when I was, I want to say 8, 7, my family moved to Texas. More opportunity in Dallas. It was booming at the time.
Yeah.
you
Bigger
know,
house, everything, or did you guys, like, what was the living situation like in Chicago? Were you like living with just the fam? Were you living with other people too? And then you kind of wanted to have your own space?
It was just us. But you know, it was in a very small like apartment in the north side of Chicago, right off of Sheridan, which is pretty much by Lake Michigan. My dad was driving a cab.
This podcast,
but it was pretty dangerous. Like his cab got broken into like every other week or something. Like it wasn't like the greatest place. So they obviously saw that Chicago wasn't going to be the best place to continue building anything. So my uncle, the same one who my dad was friends with, the same one who almost didn't show up to the wedding, he had already moved down to Dallas, Texas. So my family followed. And then I grew up in Dallas for the next 16 years. You know, things kind of always were back and forth, you know, there was never any sort of success. So that kind of ended up being a driving force. And, you know, all right, what the hell am I going to do with my life? Like, where am I going?
At what age do you really ask yourself that? Like, because there's a certain, I mean, I grew up in like Lincroft, New Jersey. You know what I mean? Yeah. So the kids around me were going to McDonald's, skateboarding, riding our bikes into the woods, going on trails. I don't think it was until I was like maybe 13, 14 that I even thought, oh, do I have to get a job? Like, what do I do now?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I maybe never understood the whole gravity of the situation until I was 13. My family actually left Dallas. We moved to Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, shoot.
Because all the cousins and all the influences that I had in my life from Chicago, everyone had left. No one was left in Illinois. We had moved down to Texas. My uncle, who had originally moved to Texas, had moved to Georgia, and everyone else who was in Chicago had now relocated to Atlanta. So all my family was now in Atlanta, and we were the only ones left in Dallas.
Got it.
And because of that, and because of some, you know, unfortunate like business mishaps in Texas, we uprooted and moved to Atlanta.
Got it.
Hard to do when you're 13, because at that point you basically built, you know, relationships and a foundation wherever you are. So I wasn't thrilled about it. It was nice to be near family, but I was 13, so I was kind of a dick anyways. So I lived there for 10 months before I was, my mom, myself, my sister were like, we just want to go back.
Go back to Texas?
Go back to Texas. We can't live in Atlanta anymore. So 10 months later, we moved back into the same apartment that we were living in before. But at the same time, like there was no business opportunities in Dallas. So my dad stayed in Atlanta and worked there, and he's still been working in that region ever since.
Same job? Same everything?
No, it's like different stuff, but like the opportunities in the Southeast was a little bit more available. So through Georgia, through Alabama, he's been working like on different stores and management stuff there.
Huh,
Yeah.
that's so interesting. So like, I mean, so the boys at the bachelor party, I remember them saying, you know, like, we remember the day Rahil left. Like, how much earlier did you leave before they followed? No? Isn't that what I heard? Did I hear that right or no?
So it's funny. So most of the people that you met at the bachelor party, all our parents, like our moms and stuff, were all friends from all the way back home in Pakistan.
No.
And all of them had all migrated to Chicago. So a lot of those guys, we were all actually born in Chicago, knew each other in Chicago. And then kind of at the same time, all of our families immigrated back down to Texas. So that's why it's really interesting, because it's not like I met a lot of these guys when I moved to Dallas. It's just that we had known each other in Chicago. We had been familiar with each other. Our families were so close. And then we all, for some reason, somehow migrated down to Dallas together. So it was interesting, but it gave you a level of comfort, right? So, and most of those guys I've known either since the day they were born or the day I was born, right? It's just, it's very interesting and not a very common sort of
I mean,
relationship that happens.
The only even connection I can make to that is that so it's funny, right? When my dad came from, so my dad and his two brothers and one sister came from Peru. They all flew in. Half of them went to Atlanta. The other half went to New York. So I think they were all in Georgia at a certain time, and then they all went to New York, and then some of them went back. I don't know the whole story, but and it's always funny because there was always two brothers in Atlanta and then a brother and sister in New Jersey. So we kind of always had that, right? Like cousins were able to be with cousins. But I never had that with friends. It was always just kind of a family thing, and I think that we like lived literally like behind each other. You know what I mean? Like we shared the same backyard. So like my cousin was my sister, like for my entire life. Yeah. And that's always interesting because like, I don't know if it's my parents in general, but they were kind of a little more closed off to themselves. Like when you meet my dad and my mom, maybe not so much, you're like, wait, where did you come from? Why are you not like more quiet and reserved? And like, why are you in my face? You know?
Well, because you had that influence from that family. Yeah.
It's true. It's got to be the Caribbean side. All right. So, so I mean, dude, I'm trying to think, right? Because so let me ask you this, right? And if it's too personal, we'll divert. But I think that one of the things that me growing up in the States, you kind of don't know anything else, right? You're just the air that I breathe. But it was definitely, I'd say, in like the high school times where, you know, I started to notice that, okay, I don't look like everybody else. Did you ever have that in like Chicago, Texas, Atlanta? Those are kind of melting pots. So I don't know. But did you ever have that like feeling like, oh man, like people are picking on me because I'm different? Like,
yeah. I mean, the biggest moment that comes up for someone in my position was probably 9/11 being in Texas. That was,
dude. Yeah.
That was interesting. Everyone remembers where they were when that happened, but the aftermath was just, it was kind of surreal. Because even if like people weren't saying anything, you could kind of just feel it.
Yeah. Kind of like when people, I mean, not kind of, but like if I see somebody at CVS right now, the way they look at me with their eyes, like, don't get near me.
Yeah.
Don't get near me.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was probably the first time, you know, I guess I could say I was fortunate, like nothing like severe ever happened or anything like directly. Maybe that's because the town I grew up in, Texas, was just a little bit better. Could be the case, but you could just feel something changing in the air, and that lasted for quite a few years. Like it wasn't until like you're back in like end of high school when you built the camaraderie with anyone and everyone around you, and then going to college where, you know, Austin, Texas is one of the most liberal places on earth. Things kind of just, you know, felt a little bit more normal, but then, I mean, you're just going through different things at different times, right? Like at that point, it wasn't no matter about like who I was and what I look like. Now it was about, well, the world around me is ending in 2008 when shit's going down. And so you're like, all right, Well, I'm in school. I'm in business school, and the financial world is burning around me. So it's a different emotion. It's a different
Did you
thing.
have the
But
moment like me though? Because I had them. I was also in business school, right, at that similar time, and I'm like, okay, like this will be my cushion. Like I'll just stay in school, and then when I come out,
yeah,
like it'll be okay, or at least be better. But like I had no idea the magnitude.
I was very fortunate because I started school in 2007. So I had until 2011. I had a grace period where we could hope that things would get better, and they did. Um, so yeah, I was fortunate. But it's interesting how like you could just tell that people had to kind of divert and change their curriculum and on the spot because they're like, we have to tell these kids like what the hell's going on in the world and why it's happening. So it's a very interesting time, but I'm glad I did it. And even though I'm in media and then working at an agency, like a lot of what I learned helped put me in that position.
I just think it's funny, right? Because we went to college. I mean, I went for a finance degree too, right? And then I went straight to Merrill, and I was interning there, and then they gave me a job after I graduated, which was its own story in itself. I don't even know how I got in there, but and you went to J.P. Morgan, so it's like we walked into a fire, you know, of a time that we didn't know that things were collapsing and things were going to be reorganized and the way things were before, the way now. But it's kind of like we adapt the same way we are now.
Yeah,
you know. Who's going to know what the
especially
collateral
now
damage is going to be off this? But
I know
we know that we're going to adapt. We know that, you know, macro, you're always going to bet on US. You know, I don't want to go anywhere else. I really like it here.
I don't know. I heard Scandinavia is nice.
This
I'm
might
telling you, man.
Dude, I mean, so you're leaving New York, which is sad in itself. So I'll be able to replay this as my own memento as the time you and I talked to each other. And I'm sure we'll cry. But I mean, how's that? So how is it? Let's transition it this way. How is it? I think something that's relatable to people. How is it to move during a pandemic? First off, to be in New York, the epicenter. Second off, and then moving to a place like LA across the country where you're moving your entire apartment and your partner into a whole new world.
So I would say if we had this conversation beginning of March, it would have been very different. Because circumstances put you in a position where you have to make a decision that you may not want to, but you know it's like the right thing to do, right? So we're actually probably delaying any sort of relocation. We're probably going to be in New York for a little bit longer. And I say that because it's just not worth the anxiety and the toll it would take to uproot and move anywhere, let alone cross country, in a time of such uncertainty. So I think there's so many pros and cons, and we kind of battle internally all the time. It's just like, okay, like, I get that the world is shut down, but the world is a little bit easier to live in a huge area, in a huge metropolitan like Los Angeles, right? Because I could probably have double the size of an apartment. I have a car. I could drive. I can go out. I can go to the hills. I can go to a trail. I can get out. Here, I mean, we're stuck in a 400 square foot apartment in the Lower East Side. We leave our apartment every 8 or 9 days. And it's every day it's a battle because we're walking around the block, but have anxiety ridden because 70% of the people I'm fucking looking at are not wearing a mask. I don't understand it.
I don't get that.
And it's infuriating.
Yeah, we were at the park yesterday, and it was. I mean, there was a lot of people who didn't have masks on. And there's big signs that say, "Hey, social distancing masks required," and a lot of people aren't taking it serious. Which is, I mean, so is anxiety levels right now just at the peak, like for everything? Like, do you
for everything?
Yeah.
Like we barely like go get stuff, right? Like we get deliveries, but even when a delivery comes, like now there's like a ritual that needs to be performed to make sure that you feel safe and you know your sanity is intact, and there's this essence of cleanliness and everything that you're bringing into your home. So you could imagine, like, we barely order stuff. The one time I went to get groceries, it took me like an hour and a half to make sure I got enough to last a longer period of time, so I didn't have to go through that experience again.
Were the lines insane?
I got lucky. I don't know what happened, but I went to, which is very close to us. There was no line. I was able to get through without really interacting with anybody. I ended up having like 6 bags that I could not take in one trip, so I had to take 2 trips back. Luckily, my apartment's close enough.
Yeah.
But then Sarah had to spend another additional 2.5, 3 hours basically disinfecting everything that was bought. So it ended up being a 5-hour sort of like situation just to get groceries. It was
and are you leveraging Amazon for like your cleaning products and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, we've been fortunate, right? We had some of that stuff already in place. A lot of our friends and families have been kind enough to purchase it where they see a lot more availability and then ship it to us. So friends and family who can go to Costco and can go to Sam's Club in Texas or in Georgia where there's ample kind of capability of getting this stuff. They buy it and they ship it to us. What's that?
I'm learning about Kroger more. I didn't even know that was even a thing.
Kroger's huge, yeah. I mean, Kroger's huge on the South, but it's a pretty big player and it's growing and they're hiring so many fucking people now because they need to. So, yeah, it's just I don't want to say it's a new way of living because I hate the thought of that, but
yeah,
it's an adjustment that we've kind of gotten used to at this point.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I try not to get too sucked down the rabbit hole because, Kat is in crisis communication for a very large logistics company. Yeah. So I hear about the transitions that are happening around the world and what the new normal looks like in certain areas. But I mean, we're going to learn, right? I think it's trial and error. And we're going to copy other countries and we're going to try and do the right thing. And there's people that follow, people that don't follow. And then we'll see. I mean, it's funny. I read the tweet from the guy from Black Mirror. He's like, I'm not putting out new episodes because you guys you don't need more ideas. It's like got murderous hornets coming from the west. We got COVID out here. We got, it's real. I've had 2 people in my circle that have had people that have died, which is crazy, right? I mean, you don't look at the situation the same after that. And if you haven't, then you look at it a different way just because you do. All right, let's switch gears, right? So one of the things that I think I'd like to take advantage of having you on is that I get to kind of flex the business muscle, right? You're kind of a big deal at Publicis. You were the deal at Nucleus. We could talk about that. And we could just kind of talk about kind of how you got into where you're at, right? I think that, it's something that we don't normally talk about in our group chats as much about kind of, hey, what's going on at work? Me and Vinny do. And again, Vinny's our mutual friend. We're in the same industry. Vinny actually, I can't wait to get him on this podcast because he's the one that hired for my first tech job. We sat in the same room and I lied. and I got the job. So it'll be funny to see when he comes on. But man, I mean, kind of walk me through kind of how you got to where you're at now. What is it like? What does it feel like to do that, right? Because I think when people see Publicis, they think, okay, big advertising house, huge legacy, obviously French company. So I guess, take it how you want to take it, how you got to where you're at now, kind of what's interesting about it and what's going on, I guess, in work today, because we're all remote, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. The path that got me to this moment it's the one least taken probably. But, I being in the financial world, having that sort of skill set, the analytical background, right? And working with numbers and things like that, it kind of lends you towards a specific route. And so when I moved to New York and I was looking for a job, I wanted to do something sexier, but I needed to leverage the skills that I had already built. So I started looking in the entertainment, right, industry, or anything to do with media and entertainment. And I was fortunate enough to get a job at Viacom and build up more analytical skill sets, but more so tailored towards digital media, digital ad sales, because I was working for the likes of MTV.com, ComedyCentral.com, Spike TV, right? And that you kind of understand the sell side of the business and how people are selling advertising on their content and things of that nature. So that building that up over the years at Viacom, then going to Mashable, and then ultimately at Nucleus, kind of built this kind of opportunity for me to completely hone in and complete, so to speak, my training and the sell side of the digital media world. So I had ample sort of insight and experience in how to do it and how to build it and how to kind of achieve some sort of success in that realm. but I had no idea how the buying side worked. I didn't know what the hell the agencies were doing. I didn't know what the brands and the advertisers, generally looked for. So I essentially said, let me take a shot. And I was fortunate enough that Digitas reached out to me as they're an agency under Publicis. And I met with, some of the head people of media in New York, in the US. And they saw an opportunity to bring in someone who just had a unique perspective. And they hadn't done that before. So they kind of took a shot on me. And now I've been there for 2 years and, been fortunate enough to work on some amazing accounts. We've worked on sports apparel brands. We've worked on tech B2B businesses, huge consumer healthcare brand right now that through all the turmoil of the world is kind of seeing success, right? And so it's like, how do you handle that?
And how do they do that, right? Are they getting more creative with less? Are they just kind of pivoting off of what's going on now and trying to just lend a hand? Like, what's their approach, I guess? And you could talk strategy. And then maybe also just because some people who are going to be, I'm thinking about the audience, not like I know about a little bit about the advertising world just because Kat was at Momentum, she was at Y&R, and I basically lived in New York, in Brooklyn, because she had an internship there. I was like sharing a bed, literally, in a dorm room. That was the way I got into New York every day and was able to afford having my internship. So kind of like, talk about that holistically too, as you're going into what their approach is. Cause like, I think that can build a bridge.
Yeah. So the business side for someone like in that, let's call it like the OTC market, right? This is stuff that's,
for people who don't know.
Yeah. So like working in that sort of situation, they saw a natural kind of opportunity or a natural growth explosion in just consumer behavior change due to the pandemic. Like people were just buying up everything and anything in masses, right? And they were hoarding things, right? So that extended itself to pain medicine. It extended itself to oral care. It extended itself to particularly like respiratory care. So, cold medicine, flu medicine, all these things just in the February, March timeframe just blew up. So they saw a natural increase in their sales, but you had to be mindful of a lot of things in terms of how you approached your consumer audience, how you were messaging them and how you were reaching them, right? Because a lot of messages sometimes have to do with people in a certain moment, right? Like let's say one of our brands helps with smoking, right? Like it's a brand that's supposed to help you curb smoking, your sort of any sort of appetite you may have for it, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of times when you look at the strategy, you're going after people who love entertainment, who love going out, who love going to concerts, right? Because who love going to bars and stuff like that, right? Because you see a lot of people potentially smoking outside of these places, right? Like that's when a craving comes in when they're kind of having a night out. How do you message that at a time when no one can do it, right? No one is able to go out in March. People are just now getting things open again. The cost, right, to purchase something that'll help you curb that sort of addiction is high. It's a premium product. Are people really going to look to pay a premium, or are they going to, save their cash reserves for things that matter most? So you have to think about how you're going to curb the messaging that you're saying and how you're reaching that audience in a given moment in time. So those are kind of things you have to think about, right? For other brands, it was a no-brainer. They just kept going with the same thing. Maybe we tailored the messaging a little bit just to make sure that, we understood how people can have anxiety and stress in the moment in time and how we could help, right?
Yep.
Although I don't know about you, I'm fucking exhausted from the new messaging during COVID-19. Like every brand saying, "I'm there for you. We're there for you." Like, shut the hell up. I don't care.
One of the things that I've been listening, I've been watching, and just real life stuff, right? I think that two things that you and I have in common are, we're very social people. So being inside, I will talk about that in a second too, because I think that is something that maybe brands are taking into consideration, right? There are people who are so used to being social in my job, in my personal life, in my everything. Yeah. I'm social. Like I can't go for a run and not go to the coffee shop and strike up a 15-minute conversation with the dude there. Like I can't do those things now. So I have to find other outlets, which is kind of why this podcast came to be. I just need to talk to people. It's like you guys are my form of therapy. And then also and then kind of scale that. Other people can listen to it too. Other people can get included in that. And that's a really, I think, a good ripple effect of it. The other thing is that the credit card companies. So I'm seeing Chase, I'm seeing a lot of other things. What they're starting to do is they're realizing that their people aren't able to accumulate points the way they were before. Marriott, United, just two things that I use a lot. And now it's like all essential items, right? Whatever's on the essential items list for MasterCard, for Chase, United card, you get triple the points for that. So you can accumulate it and then purchase somewhere. So like they're trying to adapt it. And the messaging, I mean, I don't really see the messaging. I just see kind of the perks. They're like, if you buy here, or if you buy groceries, if you buy flu medicine, if you buy at the pharmacy, we're going to give you triple the points. I mean, is that something that you guys are recommending to your clients, or what are you guys, like, what are, I guess, some creative stuff you guys are doing?
I think what's helpful is not being tone deaf the best you can, right? So
it's tough when you live in it. When you live in the industry, it's very tough.
But there's a difference between like saying how we're all in this together versus saying here's how this could potentially help you. Because at the end of the day, you could try to mask an advertisement as being like a positive message for someone, but I'm going to say most consumers are not idiots and they know what you're doing. You're trying to sell a product. So that's why the exhaustion is starting to come in, because people are just seeing it over and over again from brands who have made a ton of mistakes in the past. Like, I don't know, seeing Facebook portal messaging kind of so frustrating when they're continually in the news over the last decade, and how much they don't give a shit about consumer privacy. They don't care about who they're giving that information to, and they don't give a shit about accuracy and fact checking. So why the hell would I? And that this is me personally talking.
Yeah, no, they're checking a box, right? And I think that they even bought a security company, right? So under the guise of, hey, we own a security company, we're gonna ingrain them into our infrastructure. I mean, a lot of people do this, bro. I mean, there's a lot of companies that I've done business with in the past, and there's a lot of companies that, are, from my side, it's like the startup cybersecurity world. It's kind of cool to see Comcast buy, a person that we do business with. But what are they going to do with them? Are they going to use them as a centerpiece to grow off of, and actually whether use it as a moneymaker or use it as a checkbox to say, hey, we're a media company, we have a cybersecurity arm, right? And so that means that we're secure. It's not that simple. But from the outside, that's what they're trying to portray.
I mean, we've dealt with people having to check in and change their messaging, even in a world where it doesn't make sense for them to do it, right? Like if you're a B2B business, you don't really talk to the average consumer, then how do you change your messaging in the current time frame, right? Some of our brands that we work with on the over-the-counter side, they just completely ran out of supply. Their supply chain is it's not broke, it's just that they've run out because people were hoarding and sticking up. So like, now how the hell do you even message, right? Like we had to stop, because outside of certain, always on sort of mechanisms that continue to be out there, like we had to change a bulk of the media because there's no point. People can't find the product at stores and shelves. So people are going through very different things right now. Some of them, not as fortunate. Some of them are having to completely cut any sort of advertising budget they had because they need to save the company and save the bottom line. And that's kind of the first thing that.
Has anyone gone bankrupt in your Rolodex yet? Or, I mean, you don't have to say names, right? But I mean,
no, not anything that severe. We work with companies that tend not to fail.
Got it.
But they are ones that have had to kind of pull back a lot, are going through their own sort of, issues internally, whether, a lot of people I'm sure have had to deal with layoffs or salary reduction and things like that. So a lot of these corporations are going through the same thing. And if they can manage to salvage some of that by taking away their advertising budget, they will. And I'm not going to blame them for that. So we do what we can in that environment. And if we see, folks, losing the opportunity of working on business, we'll do what we can to find somewhere else where help is needed. But I think times are tough for everybody currently.
It is. It's a reevaluation period, right? And I think I feel that on a personal level, I feel it on a business level, because, I deal with very large telco companies and they're reevaluating where it's like we're reevaluating first off what we're spending, what projects we're doing, what's a priority, what's essential. And then from there, we're going to basically put the criteria, put the decision on the higher ups, right? So I'm seeing reorgs where it's thinner at the top. One guy has to do, you know, maybe 6 different departments, and that's just IT, right? But that IT then goes up to business, and then it goes. So like everybody's watching where the dollars are going, and I can empathize because I'm doing the same. You know, Kat and I right now are. I'm basically using this time to educate myself, right? What's the things that I get excited about when things like this happen, and I don't get excited about much, but like, it's just, okay, where's going to be the opportunity, right? Business mindset. Where's the opportunity going to be? Like, we had a conversation on the couch on Saturday, and I was asking her, I'm like, you know, like I talked to my mortgage guy last week and was asking him questions about, you know, what should the behaviors be right now if I'm going to look to, say, move into a nicer area and a larger home in the next 2 to 3 years, right? So he's giving me his observations. He's telling me that based on historical experience, this is how it's going to shake out. And then I start watching some YouTube videos. And the next thing you know, it's like, I'm like a real estate guru. You know? And so I'm talking to Kat, and I'm explaining to her all the things that I'm talking about. And the thing that kind of hit me, because we're a conservative, fiscally conservative, like, household, you know, mostly on the Kat side. Like, she definitely holds it tight. We're frugal. We don't spend a lot. But, you know, it's like, what if, right? What if we could buy the $1 million house in the really nice neighborhood that's got the good schools for P in the next 3 years, but get it for $1 million for 500? And then I started to think, well, I mean, are you running out of battery on your things?
Keep going.
Okay.
my AirPods die after 1 hour.
Do it? It's the worst. And then, so we were, then we started to think about that, right? And then I started to go, well, I mean, you know, we pay less than 500 for this house. What if we could just get a more modern, could be a similar size, right? We're not that big. We don't plan on having like 8 kids. So what if we could just get that and then, like, implant this house, a more modern version, into a nicer area, maybe spend less than we did on this house, and then keep the same flow, right? Just take care of that opportunity. So like, that's where my mind goes when I think about what opportunity for me. Like, we're just saving. We're only spending on food. You know, this hoodie was like $4. I don't know. Like,
have you budgeted in the Jet season tickets yet?
What?
Did you budget in the Jet season tickets stuff?
Oh, dude. So can we talk about that? So I have the guy's number who calls me like every year asking, like, we've got this offer going on. I'm like, dude, you're going to call me in 3 weeks with a limited time offer. Like, I know it. I mean, I'm down to go halves on the Jets tickets, bro, if you are.
I bet your life I'm not coming out to MetLife.
Are you going to get Rams season tickets? What are you going to do?
No, I'm still on the wait list for the Bears.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
You are a Cubs season ticket holder.
I am. There's just not a season. That's a problem. This is my first year.
What are they doing with that?
So this is first year as season ticket holder for the Cubs. The opportunity was brought to me by Sarang, who you know.
Yep.
And so 3 of us went in on a couple of seats out in the bleachers.
Uh-huh.
And it was 2 different payments, right? Like the first half was due, and then the second half was due a month after. We actually made the first half payment, I believe, in February, and then March was when the second payment was due, but they delayed that one. So now it's just, as soon as Manfred and the MLB Association and the Players Association make a decision, that's when we start kind of being like, all right, here's your money back. Or they'll ask to keep the money and they'll give you like some sort of credit going next season. Yeah. I don't know. I'd rather have the money back. So I can do what I need to do with it, and then I'll come revisit that next year. Who knows what the hell's going to happen next year? So I'm not taking that sort of, I'm a little bit more risk averse when it comes to that situation. But it just sucks, man. We were so amped. We were supposed to be in Chicago April 24th for a game. Like, the summertime shy is so much fun. Oh, I just hate it. I hate everything around us right now.
It's disrupted a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right, cool. Let's wrap this up. I've held you now 55 minutes, I think.
It's going by fast.
Yeah, bro. Right. I mean, I feel like we're definitely going to need more, right? We're definitely, I mean, I think we touched the service on a few things. One of the things that I liked was, you know, we could kind of riff on a technical level. And I'm genuinely interested in your industry. So, because I think it moves, and you guys are also selling stuff to other people who are selling stuff, which is like very meta, very cool. And there's a lot of money to be made there. So, all right, cool. So the way that we end this is by me asking you a question. So I'm going to ask you the question, and then I'll give you like 4 seconds to think about it while I just kind of wrap it up. Because I don't want to hold you more than an hour. I have a call, and then I got to send this off for post edit. So the whole fill in the blank, right? Let's go over it again. Fill in the blank. We're listening to stories. We're talking to Rahil, and we're trying to see what other people are hearing off of it, right? What empowerment, what silver lining. The question that we're asking every guest is, okay, so after all this conversation, discovering the blank in you by listening to the blank in them. So when you hear that statement, discovering the blank in you by listening to the blank in them, what comes to you? And this could be in any context, right?
That's a good question.
It's my podcast name. Fill in the blank, Rahil.
I mean, look, it's you're hard pressed to understand the situation that the whole world is in right now, and I understand some people are going through it a lot more in a more difficult stance than others. You asked, you know, how is it living in New York City, in the epicenter at one point of this whole situation. You generally discover the fortune in you, you know, by having to see the struggles in them. And it's, I say that because, you know, every single day we're watching Cuomo, who's done a hell of a job, to the best of his ability, right? And you're watching the numbers, and it's become a point where, you know, one death is new as 10,000 as a statistic, and so it's become a statistic. And you kind of get too disenfranchised or too separated from the realities of it, and then there's the pieces, the think pieces, or the you know, hard-hitting journalism or some sort of news that tells you a little bit more of a personal side to what's happening. And when you see that, all you can do is count your blessings and figure out, look, I am stuck in a tiny ass apartment in the Lower East Side. I only go outside every 8 days, but I'm fine. I'm healthy. I still have a job, luckily. And I'm young. So when I'm ready, I will hang out in Santa Monica and Manhattan Beach at some point in time.
We're going to live another 3-4 lives, bro. So I think that, you know, I think that, that's one thing that I've been reminded of a lot. I am really young. And this is happening, and this is something that never has happened before in anybody's lifetime. So it's, the gratitude that I feel on a daily basis is that. So that's a nice one, dude. I think
I'm just glad I was able to watch the Cubs win a World Series in my lifetime. That's all I ever asked.
I mean, the fact that you saw that in your first 30 years,
pretty impressive.
That's, I mean, it's a high mountain. All right, bro. Thank you so much for joining. I love you. And
all right, man.
Don't we do this every day? I worked them long nights to get a payday. Finally got paid, now I need shade and